The arena of Tor 9 fell silent as the last opponent slumped to the ground. Cade Voss stood alone in the center, chest heaving, bloodied metal pipe still gripped in his right hand. Sweat and alien ichor dripped from his brow as he raised his eyes to the private observation deck, where the Overlord Malax watched with thinly veiled displeasure. 7 cycles undefeated. The announcer's voice boomed across the stadium. The human remains champion. The crowd, a mix of 15 different species from across the Orion Arm, erupted into cheers and howls. Some stood on appendages, others released pheromones of excitement. But Cade took no pleasure in their adoration. His gaze remained fixed on Malax, the bloated 6-limbed Vexian who owned both this arena and the one thing Cade cared about in this miserable corner of the galaxy. Guards escorted him back to his cell, a cramped metal box hardly better than a storage container. The moment the force field hummed into place, Cade collapsed onto his thin sleeping mat. His muscles screamed in protest, new bruises forming atop old ones that never had time to heal. "Did you win again?" A small voice chirped from the ventilation duct near the ceiling. Cade managed a tired smile. "Hello, Pip." The tiny maintenance drone, no larger than Cade's hand, wiggled through the grate and hovered down to eye level. Its single blue optical sensor flickered as it performed a quick medical scan. "You have 3 fractured ribs and a hairline fracture in your left ulna," Pip reported. "Would you like me to request medical attention?" "No," Cade replied. "No doctors. They just drugged me and I need to stay sharp." He sat up with a wince and reached beneath his mat, pulling out a crude map sketched on scraps of fabric sewn together. A network of passageways, guard rotations, and security measures. Information gathered over 11 months of captivity. "Did you find what I asked for?" Cade whispered. Pip's optical sensor dimmed before projecting a small hologram, a 3-dimensional layout of the upper levels of the facility. "The Overlord's private quarters are here," the drone indicated. "But the room where they keep your—" "Mate, I couldn't access it. Heavy security protocols." Cade's jaw tightened. "It's been 3 days since they've let me see Lyra. I need to know if she's still—" His voice caught. "Life signs were detected in the restricted wing," Pip offered hopefully. "Though I cannot confirm identity." Cade nodded, adding new details to his map. Tomorrow would be his 50th fight. According to station gossip, Malax had arranged something special, supposedly the most dangerous opponent yet. The Overlord was growing frustrated that the fragile human refused to die for the entertainment of the crowds. What Malax didn't understand was that humans weren't merely resilient. They became downright dangerous when someone they loved was threatened. "The East Corridor guard rotation changes at the mid-cycle bell," Pip reported. "There's a 17-second gap in surveillance." "That's all I need," Cade said, plotting the final route on his map. He'd been patient, methodical in his planning. Each fight had bought him more fame, more information, more access. The guards had grown complacent around the cooperative champion. They didn't realize every defeated opponent, every drop of blood spilled in that arena, was just another step toward Lyra. And after tomorrow's fight, win or lose, Cade would make his move. "Get some rest," Pip chirped, floating back toward the vent. "You'll need your strength." Cade laid back, fingers tracing the small silver band on his wrist, the matching pair to the one Lyra wore. The neural link was dampened by whatever technology Malax used, but sometimes, in the quiet moments between consciousness and sleep, he could still feel her. Those fleeting connections were enough to keep hope alive. Tomorrow it would end. Either he'd free Lyra or die trying. The creature they brought to face Cade barely resembled anything biological. Standing 12 feet tall, its body was a patchwork of armored plates, synthetic muscle and weaponized limbs, a chimera of technology and flesh engineered for one purpose: to kill. "Citizens of the galactic fringe," Malax's voice echoed through the arena. "Today our human champion faces the amalgam pride of the Nexus pits." The crowd's excitement had a different tenor today, the bloodthirsty anticipation of witnessing death rather than victory. Cade rolled his shoulders, feeling the pain of his unhealed injuries. They'd given him only a shock staff, a weapon that would be laughably inadequate against the monster before him. "Begin." the announcer called. The amalgam moved with surprising speed, its massive body covering the distance between them in seconds. Cade barely dodged the first attack, feeling the wind of massive claws as they passed inches from his face. The creature roared, a mechanically amplified sound that vibrated the arena floor. Cade's mind worked frantically, cataloguing weaknesses. The crowd expected him to die here, but dying wasn't an option, not while Lyra remained a prisoner. "Getting slow, human," taunted a metallic voice from the creature. "I taste your fear." Cade didn't waste breath responding. He feinted left, then ducked under a sweeping arm to deliver a strike to what appeared to be a hydraulic joint. The shock staff discharged with a crackling burst, but the amalgam barely flinched. 3 more attacks, 3 more failures. The creature was learning his patterns, anticipating his movements. A glancing blow caught Cade's shoulder, sending him tumbling across the blood-stained sand. Pain exploded through his already damaged ribs. In the observation deck, Malax leaned forward, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Cade struggled to his feet, tasting blood. His gaze swept the arena, noting the drainage grates, the uneven surfaces, the support pillars. 11 months of fighting in this pit had taught him every inch. The amalgam charged again. This time, instead of dodging, Cade ran directly toward it, sliding beneath its massive legs at the last moment. As he passed under, he jammed his shock staff into the grate beneath them and activated it at maximum power. Electricity arced through the metal drainage system, the same system Cade had mapped during endless fights. The amalgam convulsed as current surged through its metal components, its systems momentarily overloaded. Cade didn't hesitate. He leapt onto its back, climbing the stunned creature until he reached what appeared to be a control node, where organic tissue interfaced with machinery. With a savage yell, he drove his fist into the connection point, tearing out a handful of neural links. The amalgam shrieked, thrashing wildly. One massive arm caught Cade, hurling him against the arena wall with bone-crushing force. The crowd gasped as he crumpled to the ground, seemingly broken. For 30 agonizing seconds, Cade didn't move. The amalgam staggered toward him, systems rebooting, intent on finishing its kill. In the observation deck, Malak stood anticipating the moment of victory. That's when Cade struck. As the creature loomed over him, he exploded into motion, driving the jagged end of his broken shock staff up through the creature's partially exposed organic core. The amalgam froze, its systems shorting out in cascading failure. Cade rolled away as the massive body collapsed, sending tremors through the arena floor. Silence fell over the crowd, followed by thunderous applause. Cade stood bloody and swaying, but his eyes locked onto Malax. Even from a distance he could see the Overlord's fury. "Tonight," Cade whispered to himself as guards approached to escort him away. Tonight he would keep his promise to Lyra. In his cell, Pip was waiting with stolen medical supplies and crucial information. "They're moving her," the drone whispered urgently. "After your victory, Malax ordered your mate transferred off station by morning cycle." Cade's heart raced. "Then we move now." Pip had disabled the surveillance in Cade's cell, buying him 15 minutes before the system automatically reset. 15 minutes to disappear. "The medics reported you have 3 broken ribs, a fractured wrist and a concussion." Pip chirped anxiously as Cade bound his wounds with strips of fabric. "You should not be attempting strenuous activity." Cade managed a grim smile. "Good thing. This won't be strenuous then." He pressed his hand against a specific section of wall where, over months, he had carefully weakened the structural integrity. With a sharp strike from his heel, the panel gave way, revealing access to maintenance. Tunnels that honeycombed the station. "Guard patrol in 30 seconds, Pip warned, projecting a small holographic map. Cade slipped into the dark passage, pulling the panel back into place behind him. The tunnels were cramped, designed for maintenance drones rather than humanoids, forcing him to crawl on hands and knees. Every movement sent shards of pain through his broken ribs, but he pushed forward, guided by Pip's soft blue glow. "Left at the junction," the drone whispered. "Atmospheric processing is 3 segments ahead. The noise will provide cover." They emerged into a massive chamber filled with humming machinery. Condensation dripped from overhead pipes, and the air tasted of recycled chemicals. Cade paused behind a filtration unit, catching his breath. Malex keeps a private security force separate from the arena guards, Pip reported, projecting images collected during reconnaissance. 4 Krell warriors, genetically enhanced for combat. Weapons? Cade asked, checking the makeshift blade. He'd fashioned from arena debris, energy pikes, neural disruptors, and personal shield generators. Cade nodded grimly. And Lyra's exact location? Detention Block 7, isolation cell. She's scheduled for transport in 3 hours. 3 hours? It would have to be enough. They moved through the station's underbelly, service corridors, waste processing tubes, and ventilation shafts. Twice they froze as patrols passed nearby, Cade's heart hammering so loudly he feared it would give them away. We're approaching the security checkpoint, Pip warned. 2 guards, automated scanning systems. Cade studied the layout. No way to bypass it directly. What about that? He asked, pointing to a small thermal vent. Exhaust system for the reactor coolant, Pip confirmed, but the temperature inside exceeds safe parameters for organic life. For how long? 20 seconds of exposure before serious tissue damage. Cade began removing his outer garments. I can hold my breath for longer than that. Pip's optical sensor flickered in what Cade had come to recognize as distress. Your injuries will be exacerbated by thermal stress. Not up for debate, Cade replied, wrapping his hands in torn fabric. Meet me on the other side. The moment he entered the vent, his skin felt as though it might melt off his bones. Superheated air surrounded him as he pulled himself through the narrow passage, counting silently. 15 seconds, 20, 25. When he emerged on the other side, his lungs burning and skin blistered, he found himself in a darkened storage area. He collapsed, drawing ragged breaths. Remarkable, Pip commented, reappearing from a nearby vent. Most species would have lost consciousness. Not. My first time in a hotspot, Cade gasped, forcing himself back to his feet. How far to detention? 2 levels up, but... Pip hesitated. Cade, I've detected increased security activity. They may know you've escaped. Cade checked his makeshift blade and the small EMP device he'd constructed from parts Pip had smuggled. To him. Then we'd better hurry. As they approached detention level, alarm klaxons suddenly blared throughout the station. A synthetic voice announced, Attention all personnel. Arena subject H-17 has escaped containment. Full lockdown initiated. Cade pressed against a wall as heavy security doors began sealing throughout the corridor. Pip, working on it. The drone interfaced with a nearby terminal, its circuits glowing as it attempted to override security protocols. I can hold the final sector door for 7 seconds, but after that, 7 seconds is all I need. The first of Malax's elite guards died without ever seeing Cade. From the shadows of an overhead maintenance shaft, Cade dropped silently behind the Krell warrior, one hand clamping over its breathing apparatus while the other drove his blade. Between armored plates, the guard collapsed with barely a sound. 3 remaining, Pip reported, hovering anxiously nearby. Their neural enhancements will alert them to their comrade's death within moments. Cade dragged the body into a recessed alcove, quickly stripping it of weapons and access chips. The neural disruptor was designed for 4-fingered Krell hands, but he could manage a crude grip. Detection team approaching from East Corridor, Pip warned. Estimated arrival, 40 seconds. Cade shook his head. Too many to engage directly. He examined their surroundings. A junction where environmental systems interfaced with the detention block. Years of working salvage on deep space operations had taught him to recognize critical infrastructure. These stations all have the same basic design, he muttered, examining an access panel. Life support, power distribution, waste management. His fingers traced conduits until he found what he sought, atmospheric regulation for the detention level. With quick practiced movements, he reconfigured the system. What are you doing? Pip asked. Creating a diversion. Alarm systems blared as oxygen levels in the eastern corridor suddenly plummeted. Emergency protocols activated, sealing off affected sections and redirecting security teams to address the fabricated crisis. Clever, Pip acknowledged, but Malax's personal guards use independent breathing systems. I'm counting on it, Cade replied, adjusting the neural disruptor. They'll be the only ones who can respond immediately. He positioned himself at a junction where responding guards would have to pass. When the first Krell warrior appeared, moving with swift purpose toward the atmospheric disturbance, Cade allowed him to pass before firing the disruptor at the back of its neck, the one vulnerability in Krell physiology. The guard collapsed, convulsing. Not dead, but incapacitated. 2. Remain, Pip updated. The station's emergency systems worked against the remaining guards now. Automated doors and rerouted corridors forced them to approach Cade's position one at a time. The third guard fell to a combination of disruptor fire and Cade's desperate hand-to-hand assault. Though victorious, Cade didn't emerge unscathed. A glancing blow from an energy pike left his left arm hanging uselessly at his side. "Detention block ahead," Pip announced. One guard remains stationed directly outside Lyra's cell. Cade checked the charge on the disruptor, nearly depleted. Not enough for a clean takedown. He would have to get close. "Pip, I need a distraction. Divartha." Little drone's optical sensor brightened. "I can trigger emergency protocols in the adjacent cell block. It may draw the guard temporarily. Do it." As alarms blared in the neighboring section, Cade pressed himself against the wall beside the entry to Detention Block 7, breathing through the pain of his injuries. The final Krell guard hesitated, clearly torn between maintaining position and investigating the new alert. Protocol 1 out. It moved to check the disturbance. The moment it turned the corner, Cade struck. The guard was faster than the others, sensing the attack almost before it came. Its armored forearm blocked Cade's strike, the counterblow sending Cade sprawling across the floor. The neural disruptor skittered away out of reach. "Human," the Krell growled, voice distorted through its breathing apparatus. "Malax offers reward for your live capture, but damaged is acceptable." The guard advanced, energy pike humming with lethal charge. Cade scrambled backward, one arm useless, ribs screaming in protest. His back hit the wall, nowhere left to retreat. "Your mate will join you in arena," the Krell promised. "Malax has special plans." Something cold and terrible crystallized in Cade's chest. With a roar that was more animal than human, he launched himself at the guard. The pike caught him in the shoulder, searing flesh and muscle, but Cade didn't stop. His good arm locked around the Krell's breathing apparatus and yanked with desperate strength. The seal broke with a hiss of escaping air. The guard thrashed violently, trying to dislodge Cade while simultaneously attempting to reseal its breathing system. For 30 agonizing seconds they grappled, the Krell's superior strength fading as its specialized lungs failed to process the station's atmosphere. When it finally stopped moving, Cade collapsed beside it, vision darkening at the edges. The pike wound had cauterized itself, but the pain threatened to overwhelm him. "Cade!" Pip's frantic voice seemed to come from far away. "Security overrides in progress. We have less than 5 minutes before reinforcements arrive." With tremendous effort, Cade pulled himself upright. "Get me to Lyra." Cell 7 was sealed with biometric locks and reinforced barriers, security typically reserved for the most dangerous captives. Cade almost laughed at the irony. Lyra's people, the Nayar, were renowned across the galaxy as philosophers and healers. They were no physical threat to anyone, but they were valuable. Their empathic abilities made them prized possessions among the elite of the fringe worlds. And Lyra was exceptional even among her kind. "I can bypass the primary security," Pip announced, connecting to the cell's systems. "But the secondary protocols require Malax's personal authorization." Cade examined the dead Krell guard. Would his biometrics work? Negative. Security logs show only Malax has accessed this cell for the past 17 cycles. 17 cycles. Nearly 3 weeks since anyone but Malax had seen Lyra. Cold rage flooded through Cade, momentarily drowning out his pain. "Then we do this the old-fashioned way." He retrieved the energy pike from the fallen guard, adjusting its output to maximum. The weapon wasn't designed for cutting through security doors, but with enough power. "Warning," Pip chirped. "That level of energy discharge will trigger automated security responses." "How long until they get here?" 4 minutes, 17 seconds, Cade nodded grimly. "Then I have 4 minutes to get through." He drove the pike into the seam of the door, where the locking mechanism engaged with the frame. The energy field sizzled against the reinforced material, slowly melting through molecular bonds. Sweat poured down Cade's face as he maintained pressure. even as his injured arm threatened to give out. 2 minutes, Pip warned. The Pike's energy core began to whine, a sound Cade recognized from his salvage days. Overload imminent. With a final surge of strength, he twisted the weapon, forcing it deeper into the weakened seam. The locking mechanism gave way with a shower of sparks, and Cade kicked the door inward just as the Pike sputtered and died. The cell beyond was dimly lit and sparsely furnished. A single figure lay curled on a narrow cot against the far wall. "Lyra," Cade whispered, voice breaking. She turned slowly as if waking from a deep sleep. Her luminous eyes, with pupils like liquid silver, widened in disbelief. "Cade." Her voice was thin, weaker than he remembered. "Is this another dream?" He crossed the room in 2 strides, falling to his knees beside her cot. "No dream, I'm here." Lyra's skin, normally a soft blue-violet, had paled to an ashen grey. The silver markings along her temples, patterns unique to each Nayar, seemed dulled. When she reached for him with trembling hands, Cade saw the marks of restraints on her wrists. "He said you were dead," she murmured, fingers tracing his face, as if to confirm his solidity. "Showed me recordings of your defeat in the arena." "Lies," Cade said, helping her sit up. "All lies." Their matching wristbands hummed as they came into proximity, the neural link between them re-establishing after weeks of dampening. Cade gasped as Lyra's emotions flooded through him, relief and joy tangled with lingering fear and pain. "1 minute until security response," Pip interrupted. "We must move now." Cade helped Lyra to her feet, but she swayed dangerously. "I cannot," she began, voice fading. Without hesitation, Cade lifted her in his arms, ignoring the screaming. Protest from his injuries. "Just hold on to me." Pip led them through corridors already flashing with alarm lights, projecting a holographic map that highlighted their escape route. "The hangar level is our best option. Smaller vessels require minimal crew." Cade nodded, moving as quickly as he could while carrying Lyra. Her breathing was labored, worryingly shallow. "What did he do to you?" Cade asked, the question torn from him despite knowing this wasn't the time. Lyra's fingers tightened on his shoulder. "Malax harvested. Nayar empathic resonance has value on black markets, makes exotic drugs, enhances experiences." White-hot fury threatened to overwhelm Cade's focus. He'd known Malax was exploiting her abilities somehow, but this was monstrous. "Security forces converging," Pip warned. "Alternative route required." They diverted through maintenance shafts, service corridors, and once through a waste processing tube that left them soaked in foul-smelling liquid. Lyra grew heavier in Cade's arms, her consciousness fading intermittently. "Stay with me," he pleaded as they paused in a ventilation hub. "We're almost there." Her silver eyes focused on him with effort. "Should have left me," she whispered. "Too dangerous." Cade's response was immediate and fierce. "Never." He had crossed half the Orion Arm searching for her after their research vessel was attacked by fringe pirates. Had sold everything he owned for information on her whereabouts. Had allowed himself to be captured just to infiltrate Malax's operation once he'd confirmed she was here. "Humans," Lyra murmured, a ghost of a smile touching her lips. "So stubbornly loyal." "Hangar level ahead," Pip announced. "But our situation has complicated. Malax has arrived personally." The hangar level was chaos, personnel rushing to evacuation, positions security forces establishing perimeters, alarm systems blaring warnings of multiple breaches. Through it all, Malax's voice boomed over communication systems, promising rewards for the humans' capture and death for those who failed. Cade crouched behind cargo containers near the hangar entrance, Lyra propped against his side. Her condition was deteriorating. The neural link between their wristbands transmitted her pain in waves that threatened to overcome his own determination. "Pip," he whispered, "what are our options?" The drone projected the hangar layout, highlighting security, positions and potential exit craft. "Malax's personal shuttle is docked in Bay 12. Minimal security due to the Overlord's presence. All other vessels require crew authorization we don't possess." Cade studied the projection, noting the 20 meters of open space they would need to cross. exposed and vulnerable to reach the shuttle. And Malax? Currently in the control center, Pip confirmed, coordinating the search. 7 armed guards surround him. Too many to fight, Cade muttered. Even at full strength, those odds would be suicide. In his current condition, with Lyra barely conscious, he glanced around desperately, seeking any advantage. The hangar was designed for efficiency, automated loading systems, atmospheric containment fields rather than physical barriers, robotic. Maintenance units, the loading systems, he said suddenly. Can you access them? Pip's optical sensor flickered. Possible, but what purpose would it serve? Distraction, Cade explained. If you can trigger a loading sequence, make it look like a ship is being prepped for emergency departure. Security would be diverted, Pip finished, but only temporarily. Lyra stirred against him. I can help, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Cade looked down at her in concern. You're too weak. Her silver eyes found his, determination shining through exhaustion. My abilities, dampened, but not gone. I can create emotional disturbance, fear, confusion. But I need proximity. Absolutely not, Cade began, but Lyra's fingers pressed against his lips, silencing him. Together, she insisted, or we both fail. Cade closed his eyes briefly, knowing she was right. He couldn't carry her across open space, fight if necessary, and pilot a shuttle to freedom. They needed an edge. Bay 4, he decided, pointing to a vessel far from Malax's shuttle. Pip will trigger loading protocols there. When security responds, we move for Bay 12. The plan came together quickly. Pip would create the diversion, then rejoin them as they made their move. Lyra would extend her empathic influence to confuse any remaining security, while Cade handled physical threats. Ready? He asked, supporting Lyra as she struggled to stand. She nodded, her determination flowing through their link despite her physical weakness. For freedom, always ready. Pip darted away, moving through service ducts toward Bay 4's control systems. Moments later, warning lights flashed as automated loaders activated, cargo barriers lifted, and fueling systems engaged, all indicators of imminent departure. The reaction was immediate. Security teams redirected, voices shouting commands over comms. Malax's amplified roar demanded verification of authorized launches. Now, Cade whispered, half carrying Lyra from their hiding place. They moved as quickly as her condition allowed, skirting the edge of the hangar, where shadows provided minimal cover. Lyra's breathing grew more labored with each step, but Cade felt her consciousness expanding outward, the unique Nayar ability that made her kind so valuable and vulnerable in this harsh corner of the galaxy. A guard turned in their direction, then hesitated, expression confused. His weapon lowered slightly as Lyra's influence created momentary doubt about what he was seeing. They slipped past, Cade's heart hammering against his broken ribs. Bay 12 appeared ahead, Malax's personal shuttle gleaming with the ostentatious ornamentation the Overlord favored. No guards stood at its entrance. They had been pulled to address the false alarm. Almost there, Cade encouraged, feeling Lyra's strength fading rapidly. The shuttle's entry ramp was down, interior lights glowing softly. Just 30 more steps. Human. The voice, like gravel crushed between metal plates, froze Cade mid-stride. He turned slowly, positioning himself between Lyra and the massive figure emerging from the control center. Overlord Malax stood 7 feet tall, his 6 limbs bristling with weapons and ceremonial armor. His compound eyes reflected the hangar's emergency lights, giving him a demonic appearance. "Did you think," Malax hissed, mandibles clicking in fury, "that I would not anticipate your pathetic rescue attempt?" Guards materialized from multiple directions, weapons trained on the pair. Pip was nowhere to be seen. "Step away from my property," the Overlord commanded, gestured toward Lyra with a barbed appendage. Cade felt Lyra's hand tighten on his arm, a silent message through their connection. "Don't give up." "She's not property," Cade replied, his voice steady despite the overwhelming odds. "She never was." Malax made a sound, something between laughter and a mechanical grinding. "Humans. Such primitive morality. Everything has value, everything can be owned. Your mate's abilities fetch premium prices from those seeking enhanced experiences. And what about me? Cade asked, subtly shifting position. If he could keep Malak's talking, keep his attention fixed. You were unexpected entertainment, the Overlord admitted. Most humans die in their first arena match. You survived 50. Impressive, but ultimately inconsequential. You will die here, and your mate will continue her service. Cade felt a familiar presence at the edge of his awareness. Pip, somehow having bypassed security to reach the shuttle's systems. The drone was inside, preparing for their escape. He just needed to buy a little more time. I've learned something. About your species, Malak's, Cade said, carefully guiding Lyra a half-step closer to the shuttle. You understand value, but you don't understand worth. The Overlord's head tilted in irritation. Meaningless distinction. That's why you'll lose, Cade continued. Because what humans will do for those we consider worthy has no rational value. Calculation. It defies your entire worldview. Malak's raised a weapon. Philosophy bores me. Your time ends now. Duck! Pip's voice came through the neural link in Cade's wristband, transmitted on a frequency only he and Lyra could hear. Without hesitation, Cade pulled Lyra to the ground as the shuttle behind them suddenly roared to life. Its defense systems, activated remotely by Pip, fired a barrage that scattered the security forces. Malak's dove aside, losing his weapon in the process. Go! Cade shouted, half dragging Lyra toward the shuttle's ramp, while chaos erupted around them. Emergency containment fields activated as stray shots punctured the hangar's atmospheric systems. Warning klaxons blared new alerts. They reached the ramp, Lyra stumbling up the incline with the last of her strength. Cade turned to provide cover, grabbing a fallen weapon from a guard who lay stunned nearby. Cade, hurry! Pip called from the shuttle's interior, but before he could retreat up the ramp, a massive shape crashed into him from the side. Malak's, abandoning. Weapons for brute force wrapped 4 limbs around Cade in a crushing grip. They tumbled away from the shuttle, Cade desperately fighting against the Overlord's superior strength. You will not take what is mine, Malak's roared, mandibles clicking inches from Cade's face. Through their neural link, Cade felt Lyra's alarm, and beneath it a different emotion, determination. She was gathering the remains of her strength, preparing to use her abilities one final time. Lyra, no, he gasped, knowing what such effort might cost her in her weakened state. But it was too late. A wave of pure empathic energy exploded outward from the shuttle, invisible to most species, but Cade felt it like electricity across his skin. Malak's shrieked as the emotional assault hit him, his alien psychology particularly vulnerable to the targeted attack. His grip loosened as he clutched at his head, compound eyes rapidly dilating and contracting. Cade broke free, scrambling toward the shuttle where Lyra had collapsed just inside the entry. Pip hovered anxiously above her. Her life signs are critical, the drone reported. We must depart immediately. Cade slammed his hand on the ramp controls, sealing the shuttle as weapons fire resumed from the recovering security forces. He lifted, Lyra's limp form, carrying her to the cockpit where he strapped her into the co-pilot's seat. Hold on, he whispered, kissing her forehead before taking the pilot's position. Pip interfaced with the navigation system. Hangar shields activating. We have 12 seconds to clear the bay. Cade's hands flew over the controls, a skill set from his former life as a salvage pilot. The shuttle lifted, engines screaming as he pushed them beyond safety parameters. They shot from the bay moments before energy shields snapped into place. Alert, Pip announced. Pursuit vessels launching. Estimated interception in 7 minutes. But Cade was already plotting coordinates, a destination memorized long ago. A sanctuary outpost in neutral space where Nayar healers could help Lyra, where Malak's influence couldn't reach. We need a jump point, he told Pip. Anything within range. Calculating, the drone responded. Nearest viable jump point is 3 minutes at maximum velocity, 3 minutes with pursuit closing. It would be close. Cade reached across to take Lyra's hand, their neural bands humming with connection. Through the link he sensed her consciousness, faint but present, fighting to stay with him. Stay with me, he pleaded, guiding the shuttle into evasive maneuvers as the first shots from pursuit craft streaked past. We're almost free. The jump point appeared on navigation, a natural gravimetric distortion that would catapult them. Beyond Malax's reach, if they could reach it. Warning systems flashed as a glancing hit damaged their port stabilizers. The shuttle shuddered, losing momentum. 1 minute to jump point, Pip reported. Pursuit closing, direct hit imminent. Cade diverted power from life support systems to engines and shields. A dangerous gamble, but they only needed to survive long enough to make the jump. The shuttle surged forward with renewed speed, but their pursuers adjusted course to match. 30 seconds, Pip counted down. A massive impact rocked the shuttle, sending electrical surges through control systems. Cade's harness cut into his already broken ribs as he was thrown forward, then back against his seat. Emergency lights bathed the cockpit in crimson. Hull breach detected, Pip announced. Automated seals engaged. Status on jump capability? Cade demanded, fighting to keep the shuttle on course. Functional but unstable. Jump coordinates may drift by up to 17%. A drift that large could send them anywhere. Into a star, a planet's atmosphere, or empty space far from any habitable system. But staying meant certain death or recapture. 10 seconds to jump point. Lyra's fingers tightened around Cade's, a feeble squeeze, but enough to convey her decision through their neural link. Together, whatever comes. Initiating jump, Cade announced, activating the sequence as another volley of weapons fire converged on their position. The universe seemed to fold around them, a sensation like being turned inside out and compressed to a single point simultaneously. Colors no human eye was meant to see flashed across Cade's vision. Then darkness. When Cade regained consciousness, the shuttle was drifting. Emergency power only. Life support at minimal levels. Through the viewport, unfamiliar stars glittered against the void. "Pip?" he called weakly. The drone's optical sensor flickered to life from a corner where it had been thrown during the jump. "Location unknown," it reported. "Jump drift exceeded predictions. We are approximately 7 light-years from mapped space." Cade turned to Lyra, fear clutching at his heart, when he saw how still she was. But their neural bands still hummed with connection, faint but present. She lived. "Nearest habitable system?" he asked, already calculating their chances. "Detecting one potential M-class star with planetary bodies. Estimated travel time 3 days at emergency power. 3 days. Their life support might last that long, if they reduced consumption to absolute minimum. Plot course," Cade ordered, "and prepare cryo-suspension for Lyra. It's her best chance." As Pip worked, Cade unstrapped himself and moved to kneel beside Lyra. Her skin had paled further, the silver markings at her temples barely visible, but there was still beauty in her face, the face he had crossed a galaxy to find again. "We made it," he told her, though he wasn't sure she could hear. "We're free." Through their neural link came the faintest response, not words, but a feeling of peace, of trust. In that moment, Cade understood what had driven him across star systems, through countless fights, and past impossible odds. Humans had always been told they were physically inferior to many species, weaker than Krell, slower than Vexians, less technologically advanced than a dozen others. But what the galaxy hadn't accounted for was the human capacity for love, for loyalty, for the sheer stubborn refusal to accept loss. As the shuttle's engines hummed back to life, setting course for a distant star and the possibility of sanctuary, Cade made a silent vow. This wasn't the end of their story. Just as he had found her once, he would ensure their survival now. Because that was what humans did best. They endured. They fought. They protected what mattered, whatever the cost. And nothing in the galaxy mattered more to Cade Voss than the life he cradled in his arms as their small vessel sailed toward an uncertain horizon, carrying the most precious cargo: hope.